Lynette, would you like to tell us what you're doing in Singapore?
Yeah, okay. There's no space agency in Singapore yet, so a lot of the coordination is done through the Business Chamber of Commerce, which is the Singapore Space and Technology Association. And also because, so in our work we do business matchmaking, trying to ascertain some of the end user requirements, and also broadly raising the awareness of space for the industry to be able to use sophisticated technologies, and also in inspiring the future generations in STEM. In Asia-Pacific, there's a lot of activities growing in space development, and we want to make sure Singapore also is in step with everyone else in developing the space ecosystem in Asia-Pacific. I also want to stress that Singapore, for just to make sure we're all on the same page, is a very small country. East Coast to West Coast takes you 40 minutes. So we use a lot of the, I'm going to use a dirty word here, terrestrial applications to get to serve the needs. And therefore, it does lead one to wonder, why does a small country like Singapore need to have space capabilities? So the way we adopt space technology is not what you would often hear about. We don't have agriculture. We import 98% of our resources. So when you come into Singapore, bring everything. The customs not going to impound it like they did for me. We import 98% of our agriculture. We are very blessed, knock on wood, we don't get hit by many natural calamities. So how we use space capabilities actually is in a lot of finance, logistics, finance, a lot of it's tied to quantum cryptography, which then a lot of space data and assets are leveraged on. And in toll system, so land, because it's small, is also very precious and very scarce. And what we will do in 2020 is we will use a space-borne asset to track toll on every car in Singapore, because it's too expensive to put gantry on the real estate in Singapore. Applications in Singapore is very interesting, a bit different, but nonetheless, I think it really requires a lot of sophisticated understanding of the capabilities, and that's what SSTA role is.
Excellent, thank you. So that was really quite a contrast to Phuong's applications, I think. So David, we heard from you earlier, so do you have extra things you would like to add?
Yeah, maybe I would like to re-emphasize a bit the science aspect of it. I know we have a number of students in the room, and just to say, with this fleet of hundreds of satellites, there are many, many nice and very interesting science questions we can address. So it's not only about the technology and the services and applications, but on the science side, on the pure science, I might say, there is still a lot to do. So that's one aspect that really we should not forget. And because, by the way, this is what we need to do as well to move to the application and services. Because you're not going to deliver good application and services if you have not done the good science before, so you can deliver products which are meaningful, accurate, and reliable. The other point I wanted to emphasize, maybe reflecting a bit on my past experience before I moved to Australia. So I did I've been working with space agencies for more than 20 years. So I have seen how in Europe in particular, this transition to data to information and services that people can really use have been approached, and it took really a long time to figure out what sort of economic model could be put around that, how to do this. That's a difficult question. So things have progressed a lot, and in particular, the big difference now, which is a complete change of paradigm, I would say, is that we have a number of missions that have been launched were supposed to be operational missions lasting for the next 10, 20, 30 years. That's again the example of this Copernicus program. And that's obviously changing a lot, because when you develop an application, you go to customers and you try to explain them that you can do something really nice. You have to be careful that if this system relies on a satellite with a lifetime of maybe 5 years later, you no longer have the application or the service. So the change of paradigm with this Copernicus program, and we have equivalent in the US with the NPOS system, means that we can now really quasi be sure that we will have this same sort of observations for the long term. So we can really develop these applications with, good chance that they are not going to fall apart because the satellite no longer exists. So that's a big change, and fortunately, for Australia, we enter into a bit more in this space when this paradigm change has occurred. So it's a good chance that maybe we don't have to go through so many cycles and difficulties to end up with this. So good opportunity here, I think.
Excellent, thank you. So we've heard from a number of speakers, and Lynette mentioned it as well, of the importance of STEM education. So I'd like to ask the panel, are we successfully developing the people and the skills to be able to apply Earth observation and space capabilities in the Indo-Pacific? Lynette, would you like to start?
Yeah, so I'm a very strong proponent of science, technology, and engineering and math. And I think more can be done, especially in Indo-Pacific, Asia-Pacific. Also because when I see young children in Singapore, they could be 15 years old, relatively speaking young, 15 years old, 12 years old, they think about space as a Western hemisphere, Europe, America, Canada. They don't really think that they could study in Indo-Pacific and get a space degree from, even in Australia, even though many Singaporeans come to Australia to study and pursue higher degrees. So I think there's a lot of awareness in developing that. And so when Australia launched the space agency, we were excited, we were very, very thrilled, because there's a space power in our neighborhood, and with such closer connectivity. And so while not much has been done, I think there's so much opportunities now to do more in Indo-Pacific in STEM for space technologies.
Phuong, would you like to talk at all about how this works in Vietnam?
In Vietnam, because the problem is we have not much demand from the space. That's the fact. They think everything can solve in the Earth. They need to send the satellite to the orbit and get the picture. And I think the main problem of us is because the people don't understand well about what satellite, what the space can help us. And that's why when I see the OpenDataQ, I find this may be very good tool, very good system that can make all people understand how space can apply to the normal work, normal day. And another is, I think learn from the GPS. GPS was start from, I think from the 1979, 78 years. But this cannot come to the public because it's very difficult to use it. They cannot translate from the lat long to the real work. But when the map, the digital map, especially when we can implement to the smartphone, and with the professional people can translate the GPS data to become to the smartphone, and then the boom the using, and many people understand the GPS, the navigation, and especially they can make another requirement, so that the GPS not only is for the navigation, that is also support for the sport, for the everything. And I mean, we cannot make the man-made, the ready-made product from our professional. We try to hear from the end user, the public, and then respond to the dedicated requirement with a small group. And this only can do with even students who can develop the small app using the space. For example, when you go to the mountain, you heard about the storm, and you don't know if you can get the landslide there or flooding there. And you can using the smartphone, you try to access it, and you get the information. At least in the history. There's the reason have the landslide or flooding, and then maybe you try to come back home immediately, or you can stay, keep calm and stay there. And I think there's many applications, many requirements from the normal people can request us when they understand our requirement, our service.
Yes, so I hope some of the students in the room have taken seriously that call to arms, and we will see some exciting Earth observation applications coming out for their mobile phones. So, David, did you want to address this question about STEM from a kind of university point of view?
Yeah, just quickly, I think probably students get the skills in maths and physics or biology or different domains, and maybe we miss a bit more of more integrated teaching at some point on that space things, because very often to address all of these issues we have mentioned today, you need to bring together many different skills. So, and that's when you can start to see, okay, I've been learning physics and maths and things, and now I see really what sort of really interesting question and problem I can address related to space, for instance. So that exists a bit, but that may be slightly to be reinforced, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm excited to be sat in this panel with people from Vietnam and Singapore, and David, who is currently from Australia, originally. So I'd be interested, are you working with other partners in the Indo-Pacific? Are you working with other countries in order to develop these capabilities? David, I'll perhaps start with you this time.
Okay. At the moment, I am still more connected to a bit further away, naturally, with Europe or the US than with countries from the Indo-Pacific area. But I know of many activities going on in Vietnam at the moment, and there are opportunities. It's still, let's say, it's on the agenda, and hopefully it will come soon.
Thanks. Lynette?
Yeah, actually the SSTA used to run workshops with LAPAN on space camps for young children, and getting them very aware at a young age, space technologies. And because we're Asians, again, we didn't have the NASA history of space. We had to create a story that was also meaningful to the young Asian participants. But we did fly in, NASA engineers and chief engineers to be able to teach the kids. And that was really exciting in, the STEM development, and that hopefully we could tell them, you could think about a career in space eventually. I would think the low-hanging fruit for Indo-Pacific and many of us is in applications first. And then we should also dream Moon Village, deep space missions. I think that will come, and I think we should now take the steps to create that foundation for the community and the students to say, we can get there some way, or even if that's, because it's really hard if you look into the engineering behind it, to say when they grow up, to set the future for future generations to pursue that deep space mission and exploration that we as humankind should endeavor to achieve.
And Phuong, so you mentioned the Open Data Cube collaboration, which is with Australia and I think the US. Are you collaborating with other neighboring countries? Or?
In fact, in our country, we also have some program like STEM and Globe, about Globe from the US, the United States. And we also have some program like the CANSAT competition to encourage the young people for the technology development, especially the satellite, and also the application. That means came from Globe program and STEM program. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sarah, if I could just add on, Pamela
Please.
mentioned about the International Space Station, which
Yes.
is really building many communities coming together to build this amazing infrastructure. So Singapore does partner with members of the ISS, Japan, to get our students to do experiments under microgravity, talk to the astronauts, go for the pseudo-training program to get them excited. So there is a lot of activities that SSTA does with the regional partners, leveraging on from what they have invested so many years ago. And we're very, very grateful for all these opportunities.
Excellent. That sounds extremely inspiring for your students who get
Yeah.
to take part in that. So we'll wrap up now. There was just one question that was on the, that came in from text. It's gone, but if I can remember it, here it comes. Given the current lack of human-rated launch platforms, who should develop this technology? Should it be private companies? Does anybody want to have a go at that? Go on, Lynette.
As a feminist, it would first of all be a woman. Because we care so much about human lives more than, okay, my case study here is my husband. Anyway, I think there's nothing wrong whether it's government or private, especially coming from a non-profit trade association. But I do think that I find that amazingly, private companies do think very, very hard about ramifications and implications of their actions. Why they do so, we can go figure, but they are actually incredibly enterprising and responsible when it comes to human flight and anything related to human lives. Of course, you can be cynical and say because a negative case study would destroy their business. Or you could be a bit more optimistic and say, they're just trying to be good corporate social responsibility. But I think there's nothing wrong with having a private organization lead in developing a human space flight. And it doesn't have to be, must be government or must be private, but my point is there's nothing wrong with having private entities leading it. Yeah.
All right, I think we'll wrap up then, given that we're trying to save time a bit. So I just want to say thank you very much to my panelists for what was a really fascinating session with a wide variety, I think, of perspectives. And I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing how space capabilities develop in the Indo-Pacific in these different kind of regions. Thank you.
Thank you.